A few of you have asked about these books here on the back of my sewing desk. You know, I'm the same way. I'm super curious about people's bookshelves. So today I decided to give you a tour of all my bookshelves. This bookshelf tour should give you a fairly good idea of my taste in books, but I did collect most of them when I was a teenager, so I do still enjoy them, but it does reflect my taste back then a little bit better than it does reflect my taste now. So I give you permission to make fun of my taste in books if that's what you feel like doing, and if that makes you feel better about your taste in books. And with that, let's get into the tour. So this here is my main bookshelf. First I have 2 books of fashion, and then here, from here to about here, is my folklore and fairy tales section. So this is like African American fairy tales, Hans Christian Andersen, Grimm's, South African, another Andersen, and then these 4 are Andrew Lang, Arabian Nights. And then this complete nonsense of Edward Lear is kind of, it's more short stories. So then I have some short stories that are all fantasy here. These are just like my favorite fantasy books. So I have my Diana Wynne Jones, and then Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Okay, so the next shelf is my middle grade fantasy. Once on a Time by A.A. Milne and The Princess Bride by William Goldman. I can hardly imagine anyone not liking them. So then I have my Robin McKinley section. Here's Tolkien. Several Cinderella adaptations, actually. These are both Cinderella adaptations, as is this one. And then these are all Gail Carson Levine, who used to be my favorite author. Eva Ibbotson, I think that's how you say her name. She's also another favorite author. This here is another Cinderella adaptation, but this one is not that great. I just keep it because I sort of collect Cinderella adaptations. This book here is really good, Searching for Dragons. Dealing with Dragons actually comes first, but I read Searching for Dragons first, and I actually like it a little better. And then this one here is King Arthur. This is the only book on the shelf that I haven't read. And I read all the books up here as well, except the folklore. I haven't read completely all of it, but I've read parts of all of it. So the next shelf is my middle grade classics. All of them I've at least started. I haven't made it through all of them. So Pinocchio I didn't make it through. Anne of Green Gables I of course did. Little Women I did. This is Hitty, Her First 100 Years, which I did not make it through. Charlotte's Web, Narnia, The Hobbit, Wizard of Oz, Sword in the Stone. This is actually a first edition, so that's cool. But I didn't finish it. Gulliver's Travels, I did not finish. A Little Princess. I Capture the Castle is one of my favorite books, actually. It's technically young adult, not middle grade, but I needed something to fill the shelf, so I put it there. Wind in the Willows, Alice in Wonderland. Robin Hood and Treasure Island, I both started but didn't finish. And then here is my A.A. Milne, like Winnie the Pooh section. I've just read the first one of these. I have not read the rest. Five Children and It and Peter Pan both have somewhat problematic depictions of indigenous people, so just bear that in mind. Peter Pan, though, is my favorite book, which is why I have 2 copies of it. This is my pretty copy, and this is my just for fun copy. And then Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens, it's sort of like Ghost at a Watchman is. Like was written before Peter Pan, but the ideas were still being fleshed out, so it's not like canon, if that makes sense. This next shelf is my still middle grade, although right here it switches to YA. But all the middle grades are like realistic fiction instead of fantasy. And I'm just going to point out my absolute favorites on this shelf. So Harriet the Spy is great. These 2 I have not read. Let's see, Mysterious Benedict Society is great. Oh, Bloomability. This was like my favorite book as a teenager, young teen. Phantom Tollbooth is really great. Let's see. Okay, and then here my young adult begins. So these are all my young adult books. This one I just recently did a blog post about as part of the Lunar Chronicles, which is really a great series. I have all these Meg Cabot books, and my favorite that I have is How to Be Popular. And then Beverly Cleary, I have these 3-in-1, Jean and Johnny 15 and The Luckiest Girl. And then I have this one here, Sister of the Bride. All very good books. The Luckiest Girl is my favorite of the bunch. These two are also both YA. The Outsider is fairly famous. These books here, they're by Eva Ibbotson, who wrote this one, The Secret of Platform 13. These books were originally written for adults, then repackaged as YA. They're my only true romance novels that I own. So I don't know quite how to feel about these books. Like, I like them. They're fun. They're just like sort of fun books that aren't too deep, if that makes sense. The Last Sin Eater is Francine Rivers. That's not really romance, but I'd say it's adult fiction. And then An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. Pilgrim's Inn, Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day, Mrs. Eris Goes to Paris. This one was recommended by a blog reader, and then a different blog reader ended up sending it to me, so that's really cool. The Girl from Nowhere. I got it because I was going on a trip and I needed a book to read, and it was really interesting, but I just got busy on the trip and never finished it, and so I don't really know how that one ends. Basically everything I've showed you so far are books that I have read, except for the ones that I pointed out that I didn't. But now we're getting into territory of books that I have not read. So I read this, of course. This is the Fellowship of the Ring. It came without a cover, so I made one for it. Of course I've read that. But then these two are books of short stories. You know, this should maybe be up with my fantasy short stories, but there's not room for it up there. So this section here is just kind of like, they're old books I haven't really read is what this section is. Although I recently did read this one and it was not that great, but it was interesting enough that I wanted to keep it. This one here has a really cool cover, so that's my favorite thing about that one, but I have not read it. So these are all unread. Although I have read others by this author. This is D.E. Stevenson. She's really hit and miss. Some of her books I really like, and some of them I can't stand. So then this bottom shelf here is what I would consider my classics, although I don't know if all of these can quite be counted as classics. Christie I've read, it's good. The Great Gatsby I read, it's good. Daniel Deronda I have not read. Middlemarch I read fairly recently. It was really good. The Moonstone is literally the only mystery book that I've ever really loved, except for maybe The Westing Game. That one was good too. So then these are my J.D. Salinger books. This is A Christmas Carol, but it's all falling apart, so I have it held together with this, whatever that thing is called. This one I have not read. It should probably go up here with these books. But it's written by Balzac, who I don't know anything about, except he was mentioned in the movie The Music Man. And so I think that's why I picked that up. I'm not sure. I have not read it though. Pilgrim's Progress I have not read. Middlemarch, Pride and Prejudice, like Northanger Abbey. Of course I've read all those. And I also have Emma. It's just I'm reading it right now, so it's not on the shelf. Tree Grows in Brooklyn is great. I have not read Huckleberry Finn, but I've read all these three are the ones on the shelf that I haven't read. This is Daphne du Maurier. I think that's how you say her name, but I have not read it. I think it's short stories. I've really enjoyed others of her books though. And then this is The Scottish Chiefs, which I also have not read. And it's really dark back here, but I'm going to try to just use my phone flashlight to help out. Okay. Way back in here is my science fiction section. I have the 3 science fiction books that C.S. Lewis wrote, and then I have The War of the Worlds. Then Life in a Medieval Castle I just put there because I didn't really know where else to put it. And then last of all is my one lone book of poetry, which is Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. But I have not read any book on that shelf, except I've glanced through Life in a Medieval Castle, but that's it. The rest are all unread. At the very top there, that little green line is The Mennonite Confession of Faith, which I've read. And then next is Grace / Last Truth by Preston Sprinkle, which I read for my Sunday school class, and it was great. I've also read Blue Like Jazz. It's kind of whatever. I Once Was Lost in a Grander Story, and The Man Who Was Chesterton. Have not read any of those 3. These are my writing books. I've read, or at least partially read, all of these. And they're all okay. Writing Magic is pretty good. It was written by Gail Carson Levine, who I own pretty much all the books she wrote when I was a teenager because I was obsessed with her. That top one is the Lifetime Reading Plan, which is not a writing book, but I thought it was sort of related, so I put it there. Then these are all my plays. I actually own a lot of plays for some reason, but I haven't read most of them. Like, none of these ones, the only ones I've read on here are Peter Pan at the top, but that's the play version of Peter Pan, which is different, of course, than the novel. And then The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. These are like my how-to books. So Purple Cow, I read the whole thing. That one is a marketing book. It's okay. The next one is about growing roses. Etiquette, Killing Defense at Bridge. I don't play bridge, but my friend Janessa got me that because she thought it was funny. What to expect when you're expecting is actually surprisingly interesting. I haven't read the whole thing, but it's about having a baby. Decorating to Go, and then this green book here is The Personality of a House by Emily Post, which is my absolute favorite decorating book, home decor book, whatever, interior design book I've ever run across. I love it. I spent like $30 on that book, which might be the most I've ever spent on a non-textbook book. I think it is, actually. I don't think I've ever spent that much on a book that wasn't a textbook before. I have Betty Crocker cookbook from the 50s that I got for free from my aunt. And then this is, I don't know, something like a homemaking guide of some sort. And then this is a sewing book on the very bottom. And the section kind of bleeds over here. Over here I have two more sewing books. And then way back in here, I don't know if you can even see, way back in here I have my collection of other people's diaries, which I have Beatrix Potter and Anne Morrow Lindbergh are published. The rest of them are unpublished ones I just got at garage sales and Goodwills and stuff. The rest of my nonfiction is in this little crate here. I actually have one more Bible than that. I do not need 5 Bibles. I really only just need like one. But this here is a family Bible. I got it from my great-grandpa. I don't really know how to get rid of a Bible, you know? Like, I can't just throw it away, but then I have stuff written in it, so I don't want to just give it to Goodwill. Actually, this book I kind of put things on that were too tall to fit on my other bookshelf. So some of it is fiction. These are my graphic novels here, and then, or comics, whichever one you prefer to call them. And then I have a couple Daughters of Promise that I wrote in. I have one sewing magazine. Oh, this one here, The Writer, I was actually featured in it, so that's why I have that copy. And then these are my school yearbooks. I have a few textbooks that I saved from college, so these two are my Korean textbooks, which I only, like, I dropped that class right away, but I kept the textbooks just in case I ever want to teach myself Korean. And then these were my French things, like my French textbook and whatever you call these loose papers that you did assignments on. This textbook is the third most expensive thing I own. It cost me $300. That's more than any of my laptops ever cost. That's more than any of my phones ever cost. The only things I own that cost more than that were my car and also the camera that I'm filming with right now. So journalism, JavaScript, and ethnography are all 3 subjects that were so interesting to me that I just kept the textbook in case I want to study more on my own. And then these here are my children's, like, picture books. Some of them I've had for a long time. This one here is really cute. It's my uncle took the pictures and wrote, like, the story and stuff. Very cute. And then down here are my biographies and memoirs. Steve Jobs, I partially read. Very interesting. I want to finish it someday. This one was called Elizabeth and Her German Garden. Very interesting. I read that whole thing. This is another Anne Morrow Lindbergh, but I have not read it. Principles of Uncertainty I read. Great. This is just missionary stories. They're fairly good missionary stories. Like, they're not too ethnocentric. And so whenever I'm teaching, you know, and there's a terrible missionary story, I just substitute it for one of these if I'm teaching like Sunday school or Bible school or something. Evidence Not Seen, I have not read. Elizabeth of Toro, I got at like a free, like, leave a book, take a book place. It looked really interesting. It was about a African princess. but I have not read it, so I can't advise you. I'm not really a huge nonfiction person, as you can probably tell. I Married Adventure is fantastic. As you can tell, I only made it as far as that little bookmark. I just got busy or something and never finished it, but it was really good. Like, it was an excellent book. Probably one of the best memoirs I've ever read. And then these books here are, like, this was my book, and this one, as well as these two, came out at the same time. They were kind of like a series of books written by teenage girls for teenage girls, and then the next year these three came out. So they're all Louder Than Words books, and I have the full set. All right, now we're getting to the books that are just kind of bimped in anywhere because I ran out of bookshelf room. So these are my series of Unfortunate Events books. I love these books so much, but they're not for everyone, but I just love them. This one is The Runaway Dolls. It's a sequel to The Doll People, which is on my main bookshelf, so you'd think I should put this one beside it, but, you know, there's no room. This is an anthology of children's literature, which I got because I like the idea of knowing all about children's literature and what's out there, but I'm not quite there yet, so have not read this, maybe should. I have not read this either, but I've read all of these. Here's my tiny closet, and up here I just have stuck a few books that didn't quite fit anywhere else. So here, Wonderstruck is a really good book. It's like half book, half graphic novel. Miss Bunkle Married is by D.E. Stevenson. It's great, but it's a sequel to Miss Bunkle's book, which I don't have. A Girl of the Limberlost, I've heard is good, have not read it. Dragon's Milk, I have not read. Man, the ones in here I don't even like think to read because they're so like hidden away in my closet. But so I have these three, I have these three here, and then let's see. Oh yeah, I have some up here. These are just like my leftover Diana Wynne Jones. So Dog's Body, Tale of Time, City Charmed Life, and Believing is Seeing. This one here I haven't actually read. I need to read that one. It's a book of short stories by Diana Wynne Jones. Here on top of my sewing desk, I have a number of books. I tend to just kind of shove halfway decent looking old books on here. Some of them I've read, some of them I have not. So this is my most recent one. It's just literally just bipped right here. But I like books that have the picture on them. I like this one too, is really nice. Anne of the Island. That one is a really good, I mean, the Anne series is really just great. So I've read that one, of course, but I have not read this one. And then this here is like a reader, like a for kids in school, you know, a bunch of stories for kids in school. So that one's fun. So the movie The Music Man, they talk about several classic books, and they mention Balzac, and they mention the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. I think that's how you pronounce it, those names. Anyway, both of those books I wanted to get because they were mentioned in the movie, but I have never read them, so it's a bit silly. Oh, this is another one. I really like the cover of this one. My grandma gave it to me, but I've never read it. The Home Book of Christmas, this doesn't even have the nicest cover, so maybe it shouldn't be up here. I don't know, it just seemed like fun for Christmas time, and also I thought it might have Christmas stories that I could potentially adapt into children's plays. And then these are my Bookhouse books. I have almost the complete set. I'm missing 1, 9, and 12, although I do have this other version of 12, which doesn't look as nice in my opinion. I think they're meant to be grade, like these are books, you know, like this one is 4, so maybe like 4th graders would enjoy these books. I think my favorite one was this one. So I've read a lot of the stories in here. I just love, like, there's a lot of like fantasy and folklore and fun stories and whatever. I've read a lot of them, but not nearly all of them. And then Hungry Hill here is by Daphne du Maurier again. Or maybe you pronounce her name Daphne du Maurier, I'm not sure. I started reading it, I got as far as this bookmark, but it was getting really depressing, and I was sick, and I didn't want to read anything depressing, so I quit. This one I think my grandma gave me. I have not read it. This one I barely started, but never really read. Through Golden Meadows. Oh, I think I got this one from my grandma too, because it says Wilton Smucker, and that's my grandpa's name. So again, maybe I shouldn't keep so many old books for looksies, but okay. And then this one my grandma just recently gave me. It's The Good News in Story and Song, and I actually like literally just brought this to church and used it as my Bible the other day. But then it has these hymns in the back. I should also show you this book that I have here on my desk. This is my book that I wrote, my most recent book, and you can go to muddycreekbooks.com and Find it for yourself. I also have linked it below. So that's it. Those are my books. And I'm really curious about what your bookshelves might look like. So if you happen to ever record a video of your bookshelves, I would love to see it. Just tell me in a comment and I'll go check it out. But with that being said, I just bought another book and I want to keep reading it, even though it's a little bit strange. So, see you.